Have you ever felt like a misfit when it comes to making friends? We all feel like we don't fit in sometimes, but when you have a mental illness, friendships can feel almost impossible. Mental illness can make it hard to find your tribe. And if you're like me, a little high on emotion, personality, and weirdness, making friends is actually easy, but keeping them, that's the real struggle. If mental illness has messed with your friendships, you're not alone. Over the years, I've learned a few things about making and keeping friends, and that's what I'm talking about today. How to have meaningful friendships when you have a mental illness. If you relate, let's get into it. I'm Patty, the girl with blue energy. I have bipolar disorder and I make videos about mental health and personal growth. Why are friendships so important for mental health? Did you know that people who have close friends are actually happier? Research shows they're not only happier, but they also tend to have less anxiety and depression. Good friendships can even improve your physical health. Talking things out with a friend can actually lower stress and reduce your blood pressure. And strong social connections can help your immune system and even help you to live longer. We are social creatures and need friends. And people who have mental health conditions may need them even more. Loneliness and a lack of social connections are associated with an increased risk of suicide. And in some high-risk groups, like people who have psychosis, social isolation has been found to be a strong predictor of suicide, which is why we need friends. You don't need a big circle, you just need a few friends who get you. Why does having a mental illness make making friends so hard? I'm going to tell you a little secret. I have never had a bestie, and this is partly because I was born with one. I am an identical twin, so I sort of have a built-in bestie. But I have always struggled with making friends. There are a few reasons why people who have mental health conditions struggle with making friends. Maybe you relate with some of them. One of the big reasons we struggle with making friends is because we're afraid to get close to people. And people have different reasons for this. Some people have a fear of abandonment. For me, that's not really the case. My fear is if I get close to someone, then they're going to get to know me and they're going to know the real me, the bipolar, messy me. And I prefer for people to know the image that I want them to see. So this has been a hindrance for me in the past with making friends. And something that goes along with this is what I call friendship anxiety. Many of us who struggle with mental health conditions also struggle with anxiety. And some of us have more severe anxiety, so it's not your typical just social anxiety. We have really bad anxiety. So making friends is really hard because we just have these freakouts when we get to know people. For me, it looks something like this. I tend to text people before I start calling them, so I might text them and then text them again, and maybe they don't write back, or I say something that I'm like, oh gosh, what are they thinking of me? And I'll have this internal freak out. And then sometimes you go through this loop where you text them some more saying, oh, I'm so sorry, I texted you so much. And you then make the anxiety worse. So I think this is kind of a common issue with people who have anxiety. And it makes it hard for us to make friends because we can lose them because we annoy people or freak them out with our anxiety or overkill when we're trying to get to know them. Something else I see a lot, and I have done myself, is avoidance. We basically don't want to be bothered with the effort involved in making and maintaining friendships. So we may just avoid making friends because they're too much work or we don't have the bandwidth for it. And then when we need a friend, we don't have anyone. Something else I've seen a lot with people who have mental illness is that they have replaced social media connections with real friends. And I have been guilty of this myself. I don't want to say you can't make real friends on social media. I met my partner on social media, and I lived in Michigan and he lived in Albuquerque, and now I live here. So clearly you can make close connections on social media. But I have seen a lot of people, like I said, myself included, replace real life connections with social media connections because it's more convenient. You don't have to go call them or get together, but you need actual real friends that you interact with in places other than just social media. And a huge reason why we struggle with friends is because of isolation. This can happen if you have bipolar disorder, schizoaffective disorder, major depression, borderline personality disorder. Any number of mental health conditions can cause you to withdraw and isolate, and you can lose friends during these periods, or it just makes it really difficult to make friends if you're constantly isolating. Another thing many of us have dealt with is childhood bullying and childhood trauma. Even though these are two separate types of trauma, they can affect how you make friends. It can mean you didn't learn how to make friends appropriately. It can mean that you have a low self-image because people didn't accept you or treat you like someone that was worthy of a friend. It can mean a lot of things, but it is definitely something that affects how we make friends. There's research supporting that bullying can cause us to have issues long-term with maintaining friendships. So it can factor into why you struggle with making friends. Have you ever lost a friend because of your mental illness? I know I have, but why do we have so many problems with losing friends? We all have different reasons why we've lost friends to mental illness, but here are a few of the big ones. We sometimes overwhelm people. Our drama, our neediness, our instability. Sometimes our symptoms can be really overwhelming, and some of our friends cannot handle this, so they end the relationship or they fade away because they don't know how to or don't want to be friends with us because our illness is really hard to be around sometimes. This is one I don't see talked about much, but it happens a lot. We attract toxic people. A lot of people think that we are the toxic ones, and that can be true. But we also tend to attract toxic people into our lives for different reasons. Sometimes it's because they recognize our mental illness and take advantage of us. Sometimes it's because we struggle to set boundaries. Sometimes it's because we feel less judged around toxic people, and so we tend to make friends with them. But whatever the case, we do tend to make friends with toxic people, and that can be why the friendship doesn't last. Along with toxic relationships, we may get into relationships that are unbalanced. And I've seen this a lot. We are either the needy ones constantly calling you up with our problems, needing an ear, needing support, needing your attention, or we are the listeners and you call us all the time needing support, needing help, whatever. For me, surprisingly, I think because I'm open about my mental health, a lot of people come to me with their problems, and sometimes that can start to overwhelm me because just because I'm open-minded, I'm supportive, and I understand mental illness doesn't mean I can handle all of your problems along with my own issues. So learning to set boundaries and things like that is really important when you have friendships. They shouldn't be one-sided. They should be balanced where you each give and take a little. And probably the biggest reason why we lose friends, this is a reason why everyone loses friends sometimes, is because we lose touch. For us, though, it may be more likely to happen because when we get depressed, we don't reach out to people. Maintaining friendships takes work on our part, and sometimes we don't do that, and that's why we lose friends. We push friends away or we disappear on them. This is a big problem for people who have a mental illness. When we push people away, it's not always intentional. In fact, a lot of times it's not even something we're aware we're doing. But a lot of us have issues with a fear of abandonment, or we're afraid to get close to people, so we somehow push away friends that start to get close to us. Another thing you see a lot with people who have a mental illness, especially depression or bipolar disorder, is that when we get depressed, we drop off the face of the earth. We stop talking to our friends. We don't call people back. We don't text people back. We just isolate. And not all of our friends understand that or can deal with that. We pretty much ghost our friends when we get depressed. Some of us will be courteous enough to say, hey, I'm depressed right now. But sometimes the depression gets so bad, you're not even picking up your phone. So some friends don't understand how bad the depression can be or why you can't just let me know what's going on. And that can cause us to lose friends. If you struggle with making and keeping friends like I do, how can you make meaningful friendships when you have a mental illness? If you're looking for advice on how to make a ton of new friends, that's not really what this video is about. You don't need to have a huge circle of friends. You need a few close, meaningful friends to feel happier. So this is what I've done to make meaningful friendships, even with my mental illness. Meaningful relationships are built on authenticity. So in the past, I tried to present an image I wanted people to see, and now I try to be very authentic. I am weird. I have bipolar disorder. I get hyper. This is me. And the more authentic you are, the more your relationships will be authentic, and you won't have these fake friends, and you will have more meaningful relationships. So be yourself and try not to hide your mental illness. I suggest telling any potential close friend right away that you have whatever your mental illness is, so that they can decide whether they can handle being your friend, and so that if that's an issue, you don't start to develop an attachment or friendship to someone who's not going to get you or support you. Understand that there's always anxiety involved in a new relationship. So when you make a new friend, there's going to be some anxiety. That's just part of the process. And sometimes you just have to sit with those feelings, even though they can be really uncomfortable. And this one has been really hard for me to learn, but it's something I do now. Intentionally slow things down. Because when you have a mental illness, we tend to jump into things too fast, our relationships and our friendships. And for me, I might know you a week or two, and if I like you, I've already told you my whole life story, intimate personal details, stuff like that. And that can lead to problems if the friendship doesn't work out. So I have learned to go slower. And this is a deliberate thing for me, and I have to consciously tell myself to slow down. I don't always do this perfectly, but I definitely move a lot slower in making friends than I used to. Make sure that the communication is balanced. So I watch for this in my friendships, and if they're not reciprocating, if I'm always the one reaching out to them, checking on them, and there's no reciprocation, I will slowly back out of that friendship. I like balanced relationships. I have to watch myself that I'm not bombarding someone else with my feelings and thoughts, and can I get some advice, so that it's balanced on my side too. And if you like someone and want to keep them as a friend, check in on them. Don't have a relationship where they're the only one checking in on you. That was how I used to live with my friendships. They all checked in on me, and I didn't check in on them. Or when we first started being friends, I checked in on them a lot. But as we grew in our friendship, I kind of stopped putting in the effort. So essentially, if you want a friend, be a friend. Make sure your relationships have a little bit of balance to them. Thanks for listening, guys. Be sure to hit the like button and, of course, subscribe. I'm going to have some new videos out for you really soon.